Let's begin. I've got my PRS Custom 24 plugged into the guitar input on the back of the SY-1000, so we're totally bypassing all the GK pickup stuff. Now, you can only access the amp modeling this way. You can't trigger the inbuilt synths with magnetic pickups on your guitar. If you want to do that, you do need the GK pickup, but we're not here to hear the synths. We are here to hear the amp modeling, and I'm actually going to start with this Bogner Uber Metal with the gain quite low. You can see the settings on the screen. The main difference between the SY-1000 modeling and the GT-1000 modeling, we've seen the GT-1000 before on the channel, is that you don't have a separate cabinet section. You can disable the cabinet section in this amp block, but you don't have a separate place to load user IRs or to use all the built-in cabinet modeling. It's just baked into the amp block. At the moment, I have the 2x12 speaker type. I have gone for the dynamic 421 mic with the mic distance short and the mic position at 3 centimeters. On the bridge pickup of this guitar, we have quite a nice crunch, even though it says Bogner Uber Metal. As always, with any type of amp modeling, finding the right cabinet selection is the real big struggle. I find with this, I really like this 2x12. I like the stock 4x12. It's got a little bit more beef in the low end, not quite as tight as that 2x12, but you know, if you go for something, you just randomly pick a cabinet and you start with the 1x8, it's not quite as beefy. Although that would be cool with something like a Tweed amp or something like that. So I'm just going to stick with this 2x12. I think Boss really missed a trick when they didn't include the ability to load at least one user cabinet. I would have loved that on here. If I could just bump in one of my cabinet IRs, then I would be about 1,000 times more comfortable, and it would save me having to sort through these IRs. But I don't mind this 2x12 with the 421 on it at all. While I'm complaining as well, it would be awesome to have either the ability to blend two mics or to have a ribbon mic, like something like the Royal 121. That would be a nice selection in there for some of the cleaner stuff. But I'm done complaining now. Let's actually just get on and dial in some tones with this. This particular amp model can give you way more gain if you put the gain switch on high. And we have these sag and resonance parameters here that I find are really, really important to kind of fine tune the overall feel. If you crank the resonance, you get way more low end. Whereas pulling it all the way down kind of moves the emphasis to the high mids and the high end in there. So play around with that one, especially with the sag control, because when you've got this kind of low end thing going on here, it's really squishy and the feel changes. So they're the two most important controls, in my opinion, in the amp block, aside from getting this speaker selection right. What you could do, let's drop that gain switch down to middle. You see I'm not using a lot of gain on this particular model. I'm going to add a boost. There is the center OD from the GT-1000 and the OD-200 as well. This is wonderful with this guitar. And of course, let's go in and add some delay. I'm just going to do a dotted eighth delay. I'll bring the effect level down, and I've got quite a bit of high cut going on. that is more than enough to keep me happy right there. We obviously have the ability, we can drag any of these effects blocks down here into the main grid if we like. Something like a noise suppressor actually would be good right now. So I'll just kick that on and there we go. It's killed a bit of that hiss, but we could add something like, I mean, look at all these effects types we have in here. Compressors, delays, flanges, harmonizer, the isolator, the limiter. You could add an octave. I want a phaser though. Let's kick a phaser in here and we will start with the, let's do the 8-stage phaser in here. One thing, if you initialize a patch that took me a little while when I was setting up for this video, I started with a blank patch and I was like, why am I getting no sound? You can see that kind of everything defaults to 0. Here's another suggestion for Boss if they're listening as well. It would be awesome if when you kick a block in on a blank patch that at least the direct level is all the way up, and something like the master delay as well. Again, while I'm complaining, you can see that it starts with the high cut at 20 Hertz. In my opinion, the high cut should be totally flat on something like that. I get that there's probably some initialization thing in the firmware which just sets everything all the way down, but it would be awesome if it didn't do that, because I spent a lot of time, dropping a new block in and wondering why there's no sound when, the high cut is at 20 Hertz rather than being flat or something like that. Anyway, I want this phaser. Again, I've got to stop complaining here. Let's crank the effect level up and we'll add, I'll take the manual control past noon, bit of resonance, bit of depth, and I'll keep the rate quite low. Let's hear that. I really like that. That 8-stage phaser sounds great in the GT-1000 and it sounds great here as well. Let's go over, somebody requested on the initial video that I did with the SY-1000 a kind of brown sound style thing. So I have a patch that I prepared earlier over here. Essentially what I've got going on is I have the Brit stack together with the 4x12 speaker. Let's just hear that straight up. I have a little bit of reverb as well. I think I've got a plate reverb on there. I might bring the resonance down just to get a little bit more kind of spiciness in the top end. And, kind of while we're doing a little bit of a brown sound thing, let's add a bit of delay. Let's pre-boost this with a bit of EQ. You can see that I'm kind of pushing 1.25 and 630 Hertz a little bit. The thing here is the Q control. You should probably set it low if you want those kind of wide pushes in the EQ, and you want to set it high if you want a really kind of clinical surgical boost or cut in there. So I'll drop them to 1. Let's crank a phaser on like I did before as well, and this is pretty decent. You could do this at a gig and get away with it. So for the person who requested that, you can definitely get ballpark with that one. Let's hear something cleaner though. I'll swap over to one of the parallel modes on this guitar to do this. And if you watch my video on the GT-1000, you would know that I'm a fan of this boutique amp type in here. At the moment, there's no reverb. I just have a little bit of this master delay that I have set up. What I like about the pan delay is whether you run it in stereo or mono, you can set a bass subdivision. I've got it set to be a quarter note, but then I can set the other tap at 75%. So that's an easy way to get a quarter note and dotted 8th note delay. Here is the boutique. Again, I'm using that 2x12 cabinet with the dynamic 421. Check it out. Let's do this. Let's add a compressor. I've got the orange comp on. Let's add some chorus to that. I'm running the chorus in mono in front of the amp, the way I would with a real amp. And you could stack up a bunch of effects. For example, I could run another delay into this master delay and I could add some hall reverb in there. Now let's add a drive in front of that, because one thing you could do is you could use a cleanish amp, and I mean, look at all the different drives we have available in here. There's just about every classic Boss drive and just about every other classic one. But having said that, I really like this warm OD. So let me turn the chorus off. I'll turn this other delay off. We'll leave the comp and the reverb on. And this is a really nice way to get a kind of smooth, creamy distortion out of this unit. So that's what I've been digging with the clean amps on there. Basically, in summary, if you want some really usable guitar sounds out of the SY-1000 and you don't want to use a GK pickup, it's totally overkill to do it, but you can do it. So if you wanted to use this unit as both your guitar synth in a kind of standalone manner, or you want to go out and say do a gig with it and not use the synth part of it, just use the guitar modeling part of it, you can definitely do it. I mean, I only showed off 3 different amps and a couple of different effects, but you essentially have a lot of the stuff from the GT-1000. Again, you can't load your own IRs, which for me, Boss, please, please, please do a firmware update and add that capability if you can. It would be so much more awesome to have that in the SY-1000. Similarly, if there's a way in the firmware where you can go in and update it so when you initialize a patch and you open a block that you haven't opened before, that you don't have stuff like I was saying with the master delay where the high cut defaults to all the way off, because you have to go in and you have to do a bunch of tweaking where, in my opinion, when you turn a delay block on, you should at least get some kind of delay out of it immediately. You should have that kind of feedback from it. Not delay feedback, just the feedback from the fact that the block is on. But otherwise, as with the GT-1000, the amps sound good, they feel good, and once you find the right cabinet and microphone kind of match, I think you'll be pretty happy with the tones you can pull out of this thing. What I want to do in my next video with the SY-1000 is basically use it as a guitar modeler. So I'll put the GK pickup back on it, and then we're going to use the instrument modeling in there. So we're not going to use the synths, we'll use like the acoustic models, and we'll use the electric guitar models and the bass models, and I'll run them through something like my Axe effects. So we'll just bypass all the guitar processing in here. We'll go into a separate unit and we'll see how that sounds as a guitar modeler. Again, probably an overkill situation for something like this, which has the 3 different synth instruments that you can blend in there with this stuff. You know, having a GK pickup on it and using all of this stuff is, I guess, the way it was intended to be used. If you do want to see that stuff, go and check out my other videos with the unit. But that's what we're going to do next with this one. We've seen the standalone guitar amp modeling. Let's do the standalone guitar modeling. If there's anything you'd like to see or hear, as always, let me know in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and be excellent.